Chinese government wants high-quality development and tight state control. Unfortunately, it turns out those two things are mutually exclusive. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, and a quick update on Operation Honeypot. And I'm betting a fair number of you have no idea what I'm talking about because the episode where I explained it was probably shadow banned by YouTube, so I'll link it below. The short of it is myself and several other prominent anti-CCP YouTubers noticed our views getting cut in half right around the November US election, and they haven't gone back up. My YouTube rep told me it was my fault that we weren't getting enough engagement. So I challenged you to leave a comment below each new video using the honeypot emoji. And in just a short amount of time, we got over 40,000 comments with the honeypot emoji. Our engagement skyrocketed. Comments and likes are way up. And the views continue to fall. So it seems like it's not engagement that's the problem. The problem could be that, as this peer-reviewed research article from Rutgers University discovered, YouTube has been promoting pro-CCP voices instead. Who knows why? Maybe there's a secret Chinese agent in YouTube, kind of like how the FBI warned Twitter there was one in their company. Or maybe it's because of that AI research center Google opened in China. But in any event, I want you to continue to join me in Operation Honeypot by leaving a comment below with the honeypot emoji. I'll leave the emoji in the pinned comment so it's easy for you to copy and paste. The more comments we get, the better chance we have at exposing what YouTube is doing. And now, on with today's episode. So, in many ways, Chinese leader Xi Jinping is a man of contradictions. He's condemned the formation of cliques inside the Chinese Communist Party, while simultaneously stacking his inner circle with people whose primary skill set is loyalty to him. He's spoken highly of forging ties between Chinese people and foreigners, but at the same time under Xi, Chinese officials have been restricted from traveling abroad and have had their foreign connections scrutinized. Xi has also spearheaded initiatives to tackle obesity in China and get Chinese people to eat healthier. But according to one fast food-loving American guy that Xi had dinner with a few years back, the Chinese leader doesn't shy away from indulging his own sweet tooth.
I was sitting at the table, we had finished dinner, we're now having dessert, and we had the most beautiful piece of chocolate cake that you've ever seen, and President Xi was enjoying it.
I guess if you're an authoritarian, you can have your cake and eat it too. Fun fact, as they were enjoying that beautiful chocolate cake, Trump told Xi that the U.S. had just bombed Syria with 59 missiles, which, knowing Trump, is probably only the 92nd thing he bragged about during that dinner. But one of the biggest contradictions surrounding Xi and his government these days is their desire to promote robust economic growth while enacting tighter central control. You see, Xi wants China to become a highly developed and rejuvenated nation. It's part of his grand vision for China, his Chinese dream. But Xi's government has also lashed out at any inkling of dissent in the country and centralized control around the Chinese leader and his buddies. The problem is, the two things don't really work very well together. Plenty of countries under authoritarian systems have reportedly experienced breakneck growth, with Russia and Vietnam being recent examples. But the thing is that their growth, driven by fossil fuel exports in Russia's case and low-cost manufacturing in Vietnam's case, is not the kind of growth that Xi wants. Instead, he wants Chinese development to become a modernized miracle led by so-called new quality productive forces. These include electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, and photovoltaic products like solar panels. Of course, with this being China, I can't say any of these will be new, quality, or productive, but I'm sure force will be involved, specifically forced labor. At the same time, the Chinese government also wants China to develop a dominant position in other advanced fields like AI development, semiconductor manufacturing, and global finance. Xi knows that lasting success for China means a China that is a leader in the fields of the future. It could perhaps even leave the U.S. trailing in its wake, but that kind of success requires innovation. As a result, the Chinese government has deepened reform for high-caliber talent cultivation within important industries and has gone all in on a huge investment in new industries. But it's around this point that the nurturing of high development collides with the fixation on tight control. Under the CCP, it's always been the case that the central government issues directives and mandates, while local governments and state-owned enterprises obey. It used to be that officials out in the provinces were given room to experiment with market dynamics and different structures to achieve the leadership's objectives. But with Xi, things have changed compared to how things were done under his predecessors. He has aggressively centralized decision-making in the hands of the central government and tied specific policies like the zero COVID measures during the pandemic and the development of the new quality productive forces closely with himself. Added to his never-ending purges, this has all led to a fog of risk avoidance and even fear shrouding the state apparatus. Today, local officials are more concerned with appearing faithful, checking boxes, and not making mistakes rather than sensible results. As the diplomats said in the beginning of the year, cadres find themselves trapped in an endless cycle of document preparation and inspection preparation, leaving little time for actual work. That's not a great environment for fostering high-caliber talent, at least not in public service. As Professor Adam Liu from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore told Time magazine last year about public service in China's economic realm, it's really more about showing your loyalty. Sometimes, even if it doesn't make any economic sense, it makes a lot of political sense to do economically senseless things. And economically senseless things have indeed been piling up in China, as local officials have rushed to enact Xi's commands to the letter. For example, the Chinese solar industry, flooded with state funding, was pushed to grow so massively that its solar cell production reached 1,000 gigawatts in 2023, which was more than twice the entire global demand. In a similar way, massive amounts of public money and government incentives have created a Chinese electric vehicle sector with more than 200 EV manufacturers locked in a price war where vast resources are being expended and few are making any money. Billions have also been wasted on ill-fated ventures into scaling up China's semiconductor industry, with stories popping up about factories that never got up and running and purchases of expensive equipment which was never even unwrapped from its plastic. On that last one, state planners blamed companies for having blindly entered into semiconductor projects involving computer chips resulting in wasted resources. But those factories and unwrapped equipment probably looked great on local government books, and you're going to want to have your books shining when Xi's inspectors come around. Mindless implementation of an uncompromising central agenda has not only led to wasted resources, but also to fleeing resources. Beginning in 2021, for example, the Chinese authorities began a crackdown against the gaming industry in an attempt to limit video gaming, which state media had started calling spiritual opium. At first, the only victims of the policy were gaming companies. But when even more curbs were announced in 2023, Chinese investors panicked, sending shares of Chinese tech giants like Tencent and NetEase into freefall. It was so bad that the government eventually withdrew the announced restrictions. Lesson learned, don't mess with gamers. Subscribe to my new channel, Gamers Unbeaten. Yes, this is real. Go subscribe, please. Besides making sustainable development difficult domestically, the CCP has also made it difficult to position China better internationally. With the so-called Great Firewall, the Chinese authorities have basically severed the Chinese internet from the rest of the world. Combined with new legislation and an increase in online censorship, the Chinese online economy is increasingly separate from the rest of the internet, and not equal. To restrict the flow of information even further, the authorities have been cutting off foreign access to Chinese academic databases in recent years, limiting the exchange of data between Chinese and international institutions. The Chinese authorities are also restricting the flow of financial assets. Unlike the US dollar, the renminbi, the Chinese currency, has its exchange rate tightly controlled by Chinese regulators. Chinese people can't even buy other currencies and transfer them abroad because Chinese nationals are only allowed to transfer the equivalent of $50,000 out of China a year. Because economic freedom under communism is like chicken nuggets under veganism. You can get a cheap facsimile, but it's never as satisfying. Chinese people are free to buy and sell stocks on Chinese stock exchanges, though. Until, of course, those exchanges restrict them from selling to prevent stock prices from falling too much. Such restrictions on finance and capital prevent Chinese cities like Shenzhen and Shanghai from developing into global financial centers, even though that is one of Xi's aspirations. So there's a big difference between what the central government says it wants for China and what tight controls are allowing. And Chinese economists have said so, only to be swiftly silenced. So is strict control proving debilitating to development? Should we expect Xi and his people to loosen up? Probably not. There have been many opportunities throughout the years for the communist leadership to take China in a more liberal direction, but they have chosen to stay firmly in the authoritarian lane. From there, they watched with horror as the regime of their communist authoritarian cousins, the Soviets, collapse in 1991 after a failed communist hardliner coup. China expert David Shambaugh told the Washington Post in 2013 that the CCP wakes up in the morning and goes to sleep at night thinking about the collapse of the Soviet Union. It hangs over every major decision. It was a major blow, but what have they learned from it? In the year of Xi's ascension as paramount leader in 2012, he asked party officials in a leaked speech why the Soviet Union disintegrated before answering himself that an important reason was their ideals and convictions wavered. In the end, nobody was a real man. Nobody came out to resist. That was his takeaway, his big epiphany. It wasn't communism that was slowly destroying the nation for decades that caused the collapse. It's that the communists weren't manly enough to fight back and say, we're willing to fail harder for as long as it takes. Well, Xi's convictions certainly haven't wavered. He's not afraid to fail over and over, giving me content for this channel for years to come. Soon after he was appointed top dog, he promised to crack down on corruption and tighten party discipline, a mission that continues to this day. And as a bonus, it's turned him into the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. Today, the centralization of power in his hands is more absolute than ever. Unfortunately for Xi, the same convictions that have brought him to the zenith of power are also the ones pulling his Chinese dream out of reach. But maybe knowing that he, so far, has averted a Chinese nightmare similar to this one is good enough. At least for now, until he can figure out how to have his cake and eat it too. Figuratively, not literally. And remember, Operation Honeypot is ongoing, so leave a comment below with the honeypot emoji. And there's also a way you can help keep China Uncensored censorship-free long-term, regardless of what YouTube pulls. Subscribe directly to our website, ChinaUncensored.tv. You'll get special access to content that's not available anywhere else, like premium episodes, live streams, and a community chat with me. And you'll be supporting what you love, more uncensored truth about China, without any censorship from big tech or governments. The link is below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.